Honey, let's get the shelves together first. There are a lot of fragile things here, Lucy suggested, pointing to a shelf on the far wall. Samuel agreed and they continued packing. The couple, together with their young son, were preparing to move out of their rented apartment. Samuel had recently inherited his grandmother's one-bedroom apartment, which saved him from having to pay rent forever. This allowed them to allocate funds for the repair of their own living space. Every evening after work, the couple would take turns picking up their 5-year-old son Willie from daycare or from his grandmother's house. After dinner, they would pack their belongings into boxes. On another evening, Lucy would prepare dinner in the kitchen while Samuel stood by the small closet where winter shoes, a vacuum cleaner, tools, and other seldom-used items were stored. Reaching for the top shelf where the shoe boxes stood, he closed his eyes as a lot of dust had accumulated there. Suddenly, some paper fell to the floor from under another box. Samuel put the shoe boxes on the floor, shook off the dust, picked up the fallen paper, and found that it was a small envelope. At first, hoping to find a long-forgotten stash, he was shocked by its contents. The envelope contained several photos of his wife with a strange man. On one, they were vacationing together on the beach. On the other, they were kissing in their room. Holding the photos tightly, Samuel immediately walked over to his wife, who was standing calmly at the stove, stirring something in a pot. "How do you explain this?" he asked sharply, holding out the photos to her. Lucy, at first taken aback by the surprise, did not understand at first. However, she quickly took the pictures in her hands, a look of obvious confusion on her face. Then she quickly said, "Oh my God, these are such old pictures. Where did you find them?" This was long before we first met, maybe 7 years ago. Lucy carelessly tossed the photos onto the kitchen table and continued cooking as if nothing had happened. "Are you serious? Why do you still have them?" "I found them among the shoe boxes," her husband exclaimed. Lucy flinched at his raised voice, but tried to remain calm. "Apparently, they stuck to the boxes long ago and accidentally, and I didn't notice. Just throw them away, they don't mean anything now," she said over her shoulder. Samuel tried to contain his emotions. Their son from the other room reacted to the commotion. "We need to calm down," Lucy intervened, noticing that her husband was still by her side. She turned to him and said quietly, "You are my beloved husband. I would never cheat on you. The past is something we all have. Just get rid of it." Her reassurance helped him calm down. Lucy then kissed him on the cheek and invited him to dinner. Samuel hesitated, about to rip up and throw away the pictures, but ended up stuffing them into the back pocket of his pants. This case for the first time made him doubt. Although outwardly everything was normal between the couple, a storm of emotions was raging inside. Thoughts of the photos and his wife's reaction kept him on his toes. Was it really just an unfortunate mistake? Or was there something more to it? Work became his refuge from these thoughts as a difficult period began, accompanied by the stress of moving, changing daycare centers, and other small worries. A few weeks passed after the incident. Life went on, they gradually settled into their new apartment. The son sometimes stayed with the grandparents to help with the move. One evening, tired from household chores, Samuel arranged to meet his old friend at their favorite bar to distract himself. When Samuel and his friend met and the order had already been delivered, Samuel told about the strange situation with the photos. Ralph sighed, hesitated for a moment, and then remarked, "The photos are obviously old. Maybe there are some details, dates on the back." Frowning, he added, "But I can't make anything out. That's what bothers me." Upon reflection, he suggested, "Have you checked to see if there are any similarities in clothing or jewelry?" Samuel took a sip from his glass and pulled the photographs from his pocket. Unfolding the crumpled pictures, he began to look again for any clue. Suddenly, he noticed something significant in the photo of his wife on the beach. He recognized the earrings she was wearing, the same ones he had given her on one of their wedding anniversaries a few years ago. Puzzled, he wondered when his wife had traveled to the sea. Then it came to him. She had mentioned that she was attending a training program to return to work after her maternity leave. "So I let her go to another city," Samuel muttered, clutching his head wide-eyed. Ralph, quietly watching, comforted his friend, "But at least now you know the truth." It was too late to return home in a daze, but Samuel was determined to deal with the matter immediately. Entering the apartment, he found that Lucy and their son were not yet awake. While Mishka was playing with a ball in the living room, Lucy was in the nursery changing the bedding. Without preamble, Samuel tossed the crumpled photos onto the bed in front of his wife. Through clenched teeth, he demanded, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Lucy looked confused. "Samuel, there's nothing wrong with you. I explained everything, didn't I?" She replied quietly, that explain how you can see in a picture from 7 years ago the earrings I gave you just a couple years ago. Unable to withstand his stare, Lucy finally admitted, "I'm sorry, I lied. It was a one-time thing. There's nothing between us now, really." Grief-stricken, Samuel stared at his apologizing wife, trying to comprehend the betrayal. Suddenly, their son jumped out through the ajar door and jumped on his bed. Clutching a photograph in his small hands, he pointed to a male figure and asked, "Mommy, are we going to see Uncle Nicholas?" Samuel, stunned by his son's words, looked at his wife in horror. On Lucy's face, now no longer making excuses, was an expression of utter hopelessness. She realized that she had made a terrible mistake and that everything was over. With tears in her eyes, she looked at her husband. Sensing her remorse, Samuel took his son to another room, asking him to play there. Returning to the room and closing the door behind him, Samuel quietly said, "Pack your things and leave." Lucy, already ready to leave the room, whispered, "Then I'll take Willie with me." Samuel stood in front of the door, blocking her path.